In this episode, I'm going to reveal the secret to winding great sounding electric guitar pickup coils. Hint, it's all about the traverse, baby. Guitar pickups, whether they're humbuckers, Strat, and Tele style single coils or P90 single coils, have several common features. One of the features, and the one I'm going to focus on in this video, is the coil. The coil is made by wrapping the bobbin in thousands of turns of very thin insulated copper wire. The gauge, or the thickness of the wire, along with the type and thickness of the insulation, has an effect on the tone. However, the manner in which the wire is wrapped to fill the bobbin can have an even greater impact on tone. To wind a coil in an efficient way, the pickup maker must carefully traverse the wire back and forth across the width of the bobbin. Therein lies the secret. How the wire is traversed across the width of the bobbin as it is wound can shape the tone of the finished pickup. When you play an electric guitar, the signal is generated in the coil, or the coils of each pickup. That signal is made up of frequencies, which are generally described as bass, mid-range, and treble frequencies. Not only does a coil generate the signal, but it can also act as a capacitor. And what does a capacitor do in an electric guitar signal? It bleeds off some of the frequencies and sends them to ground. That's why a capacitor is part of a tone knob circuitry. As you turn the tone knob in a well-designed guitar circuit, you'll either gradually subtract treble and mid-range frequencies, or you'll gradually add them back into the signal. These capacitors are rated in different values, which can determine how many frequencies they can affect. We call this value capacitance. The manner in which a pickup coil has been wound can affect its capacitance. The higher the capacitance, the weaker the treble and mid-range frequencies in the outgoing signal. The lower the capacitance, the stronger the treble and mid-range frequencies are in the outgoing signal. In both cases, bass frequencies are mostly left intact and always remain part of the outgoing signal. The capacitance of a pickup coil is controlled by how the coil is formed, and how the coil is formed is determined by how the wire is traversed from side to side onto the spinning bobbin. On the left is a uniformly wound coil. Each turn of wire is laid down immediately next to and parallel to the previous turn. This pattern is maintained side to side and from start to the finish of the wind. On the right is a scatter wound coil. Each turn is laid down in a random fashion, hence the term scatter wound. A uniformly wound coil has a higher capacitance, while a scatter wound coil has a lower capacitance. That's why guitarists love scatter wound pickups. The signal they send to the amp has more treble and mid-range frequencies to go along with the bass frequencies. Uniformly wound pickups, however, tend to sound dark and muddy. Therefore, my secret to winding a pickup coil that will yield a specific tonal response is the technique I use to traverse the wire as it's wound onto the bobbin. By deliberately controlling the speed of the traverse, I can wind a coil to have a lot of scatter and very little uniformity, or I can wind a coil to have a little bit of scatter and a lot of uniformity. For example, let's say you want to make a pickup that will yield more bass and less top-end brightness. You would simply wind the coil with more uniformity and less scatter as you traverse the wire. This will yield a coil with higher capacitance, which, as I said before, will result in more bass and less treble and mid-range. On the other hand, let's say you want a brighter sounding pickup. In that case, you would wind the coil with less uniformity and more scatter as you traverse the wire. This will yield a coil with a lower capacitance, which will result in more treble and mid-range frequencies in the outgoing signal. There is another factor which some will argue can have an impact on shaping a coil's contribution to tone, and that's wire tension. However, I would argue that proper wire tension is more of a factor in reducing or eliminating potential microphonic feedback. The most common way to traverse wire is to do so manually. The coil wire is pinched between the thumb and forefinger and carefully traversed side to side between a pair of guides which limit the extent of the traverse so as not to go too far. Varying the speed of the traverse during the course of a winding session will yield a scatter wound coil, and the extent to which the wire is scattered is how you can shape the tone of the pickup coil. A person who is highly skilled and experienced at winding pickup coils can precisely control their traversing technique, and that allows them to achieve a desired level of coil capacitance and therefore the tone of the finished pickup. You want a pickup that has more bass? They can do that. Want more treble? They can do that as well. The only downside to applying this secret is that to master it, you have to experiment a lot and keep track of your results. One way to do this is to use an LCR meter that can measure capacitance at 100 kilohertz. When you measure the capacitance of a finished coil, you'll need to write down the number displayed on the meter for later reference. It's important to bear in mind that this number may not be super accurate measurement. There are other factors that play into it. However, it is a number that can be useful. Let me explain. Later on, after you've assembled the pickup, you can install it into a guitar or some other kind of test rig in order to gauge the pickup's tone, either with your ears or auto-analyzing equipment and or software. Doing this will give you an opportunity to associate the coil's level of capacitance, which you measured and recorded earlier, with the actual tone of the finished pickup. Eventually, after you've made a lot of pickups this way, you'll develop a multitude of traversing techniques, each of which will yield a different blend of bass, mid-range, and treble frequencies. If you don't want to invest in an LCR meter and want to keep your process simple, you could simply document your impression of the technique you use to traverse the wire, uniform, scattered, or a little of both, and pair that with your impression of the finished pickup's tone. This is a big reason why CNC winders are gaining popularity. With a CNC winder, it's possible to select from an almost infinite number of stored traversing patterns in order to nail any desired level of capacitance and therefore tone. The winder I use, however, is not a CNC winder, but it does have an automated traversing mechanism. By precisely varying the speed of the traverse at specific turn counts, I can create numerous winding patterns from uniform to fully scattered, which I can document for repeatability. Before any of you call me out for not mentioning magnets and what effect they have on tone, this video is solely about the coil. In the future, I'll do some videos where I can share my knowledge on how to choose a magnet to dial in a pickup's tone. If you're intrigued by the winder I use, you can build one yourself. I offer a fully illustrated assembly manual complete with a parts list, a wiring diagram, and full-size cut plan with dimensions. Just click the link in the description below and you'll be taken to my eGuitar Plans website. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and there you can choose to order and download a PDF of the assembly manual for this winder. Now, I realize this episode was pretty technical and you may have to watch it a few times to understand what the heck it was I was trying to explain, but hopefully you'll find this info useful. If so, give me a thumbs up, and as always, post your questions and comments below. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, click the subscribe button and I'll continue to share my knowledge and experiences in the world of electric guitar making.